Who doesn't love the idea of homemade focaccia bread? Focaccia bread is light and fluffy on the inside. It has little pockets of air, and the outside, if it's done right, is nice and crispy, and it's kind of loaded up with a little bit of olive oil and salt, which makes it taste so good. So if you want to make an easy homemade focaccia bread, you're in the right place. Because today you're gonna learn how to make focaccia bread at home. And actually it's my husband, Chef Hubs as I call him, who's been perfecting this focaccia bread recipe over the past couple of months. So before I take you into the kitchen and jump right into how to make this easy homemade focaccia at home, I'm gonna just remind you to subscribe to the sipbitego channel on YouTube to get more delicious restaurant style menus. So to start making this homemade focaccia bread recipe, the first thing you're going to do is combine bread flour and dry yeast in a large bowl. And then you make a small well in the center of the flour for the next step, which is that you, in a separate bowl, add water, about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and sea salt together. You stir together that mixture until the salt has dissolved. So then that mixture of the salt water goes into the bread flour and dry yeast mixture that you already started. So you pour the salt water and olive oil into the flour bowl and stir with your hands or a spatula until a ball forms. This is a great focaccia bread recipe for beginners because it is so forgiving. So at this time, you knead the dough together by folding each corner into itself. You need to wait about 15 minutes and then continue to knead the dough until smooth. This time in between allows you to have the dough rise a little bit, and you want to repeat this 2 to 3 times and keep the dough covered with a damp towel so it retains all the moisture. You see, this is a great job for someone who has some biceps like Chef Hubs here. He's just going crazy kneading the dough, kneading the dough. He just sets a timer for 15 minutes and comes back to it every 15 minutes. So after kneading the dough 2 or 3 times and covering it in between, you cover the dough with plastic and let it rise until it has doubled in size. That's about 2 hours if you leave it out of the fridge, and you could also put it in the fridge at this time and leave it for 12 hours or overnight. We once were so busy one week that we made the dough, Chef Hubs made the dough, and it took us 6 days to get to the dough. And actually that was a really fluffy, light focaccia bread. So there's different times for letting it go, and you can let it go for as little as 2 hours out on the counter and as long as 6 days apparently in the fridge. Now, I don't see why you need to do that on a regular basis, but if you forget it, don't worry about it. You can always bake it later. So here you see Chef Hubs is liberally spreading olive oil on the inside of the baking pan, and you don't want to forget the bottom and all the sides of the pan because you want the focaccia dough to soak up all of that olive oil. Focaccia dough is such an easy and forgiving dough to work with. That's why I always recommend it for a beginner bread recipe to anyone who's looking to get into bread, especially right now when people are at home and they have a little bit more time. So that's one of my reasons of doing it. It's really forgiving and it's easy to do. You just have to remember to really grease the pan. So once the dough has doubled in size, it's time to pour it into the oiled baking pan, and you want to stretch the dough to fit the shape of the baking pan. And as you can see, it might be hard to stretch the dough to the pan corners. That's especially true if the dough is cold at all. So if you're having any trouble stretching the dough, that's normal. Just cover the dough with a damp cloth and let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes on the counter. And that will give enough time for the dough to relax, making it easier to stretch. So you'll see that Chef Hubs just comes back to the dough and works it every 10 or 15 minutes until it stretches all the way to the edge, and that's going to give it that beautiful focaccia bread rectangle shape. So if you want to make a classic focaccia bread, this is the one that's going to do it if you keep coming back and making sure it stretches to the edge of the pan. Oh, that looks so delicious already, and it's not even cooked. It's just dough. So for the next part, once the dough is fitted to the pan size, it's time for the second rise. So you're going to simply cover the baking pan with a damp towel and set aside in a warm area. So you want it to be about 85 degrees, and usually houses aren't 85 degrees unless you have like a sunny window or something. So instead, a little hack that you can do is turn on the oven light, which will warm the oven a little bit, but you're not going to turn on the actual oven. It's literally just the oven light. And so put the towel on the pan with the towel on into the oven and let it just heat, and that's gonna just let it rise kind of naturally. So for about 45 to 60 minutes, the dough will take to rise. And once the dough rises, but it isn't completely doubled in size, that is when you want to take it out and it's time to dimple the dough. So this is a really fun part to do, to watch, to film, to get excited about. So after that, you're going to dimple the dough with your fingertips to create small holes in the dough. So you want to set out a little bit of water on the counter, and that's going to help the dough from sticking to your fingers while you do this. So you're going to dimple the dough with your fingertips to create small holes in the focaccia dough. Be sure to press your fingers down so they hit the bottom of the pan, and don't worry, because the dough is sticky, it will close back up on the bottom, but the top will have those beautiful holes that you're used to seeing in focaccia bread. So be sure to keep dipping your fingers in water so they're not sticky, and then dip your fingers in the dough. Look how fun this is. It's kind of like moguls on a ski slope, if you have any idea what I'm talking about. If not, you are probably not from New England or a cold place. Anyways, once that is done, it is time to let it proof in the warm area again. So during the day, that's a windowsill, and at night, that is our oven with just the oven light on. Again, you do not turn on the oven. You are not actually baking the dough at this time. You're just letting it rise a little bit because you guessed it, it is time to drizzle some olive oil on top of focaccia dough and then set it back in the oven, where it's going to actually bake this time. And it's so funny because baking the focaccia bread takes the least amount of time. So see, he's putting on some of our favorite seasonings. We've tried so many at this point, it's ridiculous, but we absolutely love everything bagel seasoning from Trader Joe's. So check out, pretty soon I'm going to be featuring a focaccia recipe with everything bagel seasoning from Trader Joe's, and you don't want to miss that. And I'll also be featuring one, it's a focaccia dough recipe with pesto, and you can top focaccia with onions and tomatoes and olives and so many other things. So anyways, I'm just going to take you through some of those ideas in a minute, but first I'm going to show you just this one, which is olive oil on the top, and then those everything bagel seeds. It is so delicious. You might never go back to everything bagels once you try it. So after you add all the toppings to the focaccia bread, you can use any toppings for focaccia bread that you'd like. Thinly sliced onions are a good idea, cherry tomatoes that you push right into the dough, raw are a good idea, olives are a good idea. There are so many toppings for focaccia bread, you really can't go wrong. You could also use pesto, and if I don't stop myself here, I'm going to keep telling you more focaccia bread toppings, and then I'll miss this part. So the next part is that you put that focaccia bread into the oven. And how long do you bake focaccia bread for? Well, you preheat the oven to 450 degrees and you bake focaccia bread for 20 to 30 minutes or until the internal temperature reads 190 degrees. Now, if you're wondering what I'm talking about when I say the internal temperature, well, that means that you're going to take a thermometer, and at the 20-minute mark, you're going to take it out and you're going to see if it is fully cooked in the center to 190 degrees. Now, you'll kind of get a clue from the outside because the outside of the focaccia bread should be golden brown. And of course, the topping should be roasted or browning like these seeds are. And look how beautifully this focaccia bread looks like it's going to pop up. But let's see. My husband, Chef Hubs, likes to check the bottom of the focaccia bread to see if the focaccia bread is browned on the bottom to know if it's done, outside of just taking the internal temperature using a thermometer. And if you are looking for a thermometer or need any tips on thermometers, don't hesitate to reach out because I love using thermometers. My husband usually uses a manual thermometer, which is one that you just, it looks like a little needle you stick right into the food. And I prefer using a digital thermometer that beeps when it hits the right temperature. So we have different styles in the kitchen, which makes cooking together so much fun and also entertaining sometimes. So anyways, Chef Hubs checks the bottom of the focaccia bread and he looks happy with it. So after the focaccia bread is done cooking in the oven for that 20-30 minutes, it's time to set it on top of a wired baking rack. And while it's still warm, you want to add some more fresh olive oil to the top. And this is definitely a time to use quality olive oil for focaccia bread. I can recommend a couple olive oils that I like, but we use a regular olive oil from like Trader Joe's or Costco olive oil for day-to-day cooking. But when we're making salad dressings from scratch or making dips or adding raw olive oil to something like focaccia bread, using a high quality olive oil for focaccia bread is definitely a good choice because it has fruity notes and all the delicious things that make it taste better. So anyways, this bread is looking gorgeous, but I don't want to leave you with just this. I want to show you one more bread that is a great way to top it in case you're looking to get creative. And my chef Hubs always thinks it's not done until he smells the bread for some reason. So let me just quickly show you that we turned this into a couple different meals. Well, of course, we just dip focaccia bread in olive oil, or we enjoy focaccia bread with some mozzarella. There's so many different ways to enjoy focaccia bread, but one thing that we do is we make a lot of breakfast sandwiches and dinner sandwiches when we're looking to eat a quick meal. So here we're just cutting up the bread for sandwiches. Check out sipbitego.com to print out recipes to make breakfast sandwiches, breakfast tacos, and all sorts of delicious restaurant-style food. So I just wanted to show you a little bonus here of what it looks like to have the dough that only rose for about 2 hours versus dough that rose for 6 days. And again, the dough is rising for 6 days, which is a really long time to rise focaccia dough because we were just busy people and forgot about it. But Chef Hub smelt it. The dough still smelt really good, and I assured him that I've worked with a bunch of pizza chefs who swear by letting dough ferment for 4 days. Sourdough, that is. So I was like, you know, I think this focaccia bread is going to be fine. Let's just cook it and see what happens. So he went through all the motions again. He greased the pan to make sure there was plenty of olive oil in the bottom and the sides. And then he added the dough to the pan and he let it proof in the oven, went through all of those steps. And then it took about 20 to 30 minutes to bake in the oven. And let me just show you really quickly this side by side of fermenting focaccia dough for hours versus days. So this focaccia dough, 6 days, the one on the right, and it definitely is a lot lighter and fluffier. And, you know, they both still tasted absolutely delicious, and I wouldn't do that again unless I forgot again that we had focaccia dough rising in the refrigerator. But I just wanted to show you that if you let it go for a few days, it's quite an interesting experiment to do. All right, and just a couple more things that I want to leave you with here before you're on your way to making your own first focaccia bread. The first thing here is I wanted to show you what it looks like to add a little bit of onion that's sliced very thinly to the top. So it gets really roasted, a little bit browned, a little bit burnt. That kind of makes it taste really delicious. But anyways, you just add it instead of the seeds at that step right before you bake the focaccia bread, and it just comes out looking so delicious. Oh my goodness. This is really good with hummus on it too. That's kind of a different flavor profile, but ooh, hummus on focaccia bread is so fantastic. Well, I hope that you've been inspired to make your first focaccia bread. It's so easy once you learn how to make focaccia bread using dough that you make from scratch yourself. You might never go back to buying focaccia bread at the grocery store. Well, until next time, don't forget to subscribe to the sipbitego channel on YouTube for my latest restaurant-style food recipes that you can make at home. You're totally going to feel like you're eating at a cafe somewhere when you add a little bit of mozzarella, some chicken, some basil to this focaccia. So don't forget to subscribe or check out sipbitego.com for my latest recipes for using focaccia bread. Well, until next time, I hope that you have a wonderful and delicious day. Cheers!